Here's how I actually tried tofu for the first time a decade ago. Now, after a while, I could make tofu tolerable, but to be honest, I still thought that tofu sucked. In this video, I'm gonna show you the 4 main types of tofu and how to prepare them for cooking. Then we're gonna launch right into 6 unforgettable tofu recipes. All of them are fantastic, especially number 2, which blew my mind. So get ready, your tofu game is about to get 10 times better. So when picking out your tofu, the main decision that you're gonna make in the grocery store is what level of firmness you want your tofu to have. Silken tofu is very soft and perfect for smoothies, soups, or even as a base for sauces and dips. Its smooth and creamy texture really blends well, adding richness and protein to your dishes. Next, we have firm tofu. This type of tofu is still quite soft, so it's great for dishes where you still want to have a little bit of gentle texture, like in an eggless tofu salad. Baking it also helps get you a crispy texture on the outside while being soft and creamy on the inside. Extra firm and super firm tofu are your best options if you want a really meaty texture that comes out super crispy after cooking. Between the two of these, super firm tofu has the most protein density and also the strongest texture, as the name implies. For silken tofu, you often just need to throw it into your dish, such as a smoothie or some sauces, but for the other kinds of tofu that are more firm, there are many different ways that you can prep it. So the first way that you can prep firm tofu is by taking an entire unopened package and throwing it in the freezer.
No, wait, I'm begging you!
Then you can bring it out, and you can thaw it after freezing and then drain it to get a really nice chewy texture. Now the simplest way to prep your tofu is just taking it right out of the fridge, cutting it open, draining the excess water, and then it's ready to cook. Honestly, that's what I do 99% of the time because it's super easy and super fast. However, lots of people like to press their tofu, and generally speaking, the less firm your tofu, the more water it's going to have in it, which means the more you're going to need to press the excess water out to get a meatier texture. Now, honestly, I've been vegan for about 10 years and I have never purchased a tofu press until this video. So it's really not something that you need to have, but if you do like to press your tofu and do that on a regular basis, then this could be a good investment for you. That was a lie. As I said, I pretty much never press my tofu, and one reason is because I often use super firm tofu. So super firm tofu, you don't need to press because it already has a really low water content. Okay, now we've been talking so much about tofu water, I'm pretty curious. Let's do it. It tastes like kind of bad coconut. It's like kind of bad coconut water. It's not great, definitely wouldn't want to drink all of that. But tofu is great. Ooh, 10 out of 10 for that transition. To show a scoring method of preparing tofu, we're going to be making BBQ Tofu Steaks. Preheat the oven to 400 degrees and prepare a baking sheet with parchment paper or a silicone baking mat. Grab as many blocks of super firm tofu as you like. When cooking tofu, I recommend making extra for the week. Just know that each marinade recipe in this video will yield 1 serving, which is enough to marinate 1 block of tofu. So be sure to multiply the measurements by how many blocks you want to make as you go through each recipe. I'll be cooking 2 blocks of tofu myself and making 2 servings of marinade. Still, all measurements on screen will be for a single serving. To get started with making our BBQ tofu steak, cut the block in half lengthwise. You can also cut the block into thirds for a more slim and well done steak. On each half, start making diagonal cuts that go through the block halfway. We do not want to slice through the entire block. One trick is to use wooden spoons or chopsticks to keep the knife from cutting all the way through. Then repeat this step in the opposite direction, making diagonal cuts that are perpendicular to the ones we just made. In a flat bottom bowl, add 1/4 cup of your favorite barbecue sauce, 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, and half a teaspoon each of paprika and garlic powder. Add each tofu steak to the bowl, crisscross side down, fanning it out just slightly. We want to be sure to get as much sauce to the center of the tofu as possible so the whole thing has great flavor. Flip and gently press down again. Use a spoon to add more of the sauce into the crevices. There should be a little sauce left over. You can open up the tofu even more by pressing in a teaspoon or two of minced garlic. This will create extra room for our barbecue marinade and allow our steak to cook more thoroughly. Transfer your tofu steaks to the pan and pop in the oven for about 45 minutes until the edges are nice and crispy. Once they are done, you can drizzle with the remaining sauce for extra flavor. All right, time for some barbecue tofu steak taste tests. Let's see how we did. Well cooked. I can taste a lot of the garlic, which is good because I love garlic. Yeah, it's actually a nice addition. And some tofu steak. Now I could actually crush that right now. I give this a 4 out of 5. Barbecue isn't really my go-to, but it has a really nice flavor. It has a really extra firm, for lack of a better word, tough texture in a good way. It just tastes really meaty. I think the garlic helped a lot. I love garlic. So that was a good addition. I think that really helped it to cook thoroughly. Very good, 4 out of 5. So next up, I'm going to show you a recipe with tofu torn into chunks by making some peanut butter tofu chicken pieces. To make some super crispy tofu that tastes like it was fried, we want to use a thick, high-fat sauce. We're going to be using peanut butter for that so we can avoid using oil. While we make our Thai-inspired peanut marinade, feel free to press out any excess water from the tofu. In a bowl, add 1/4 cup of peanut butter, 2 tablespoons of tamari, 2 teaspoons of rice vinegar, 1 tablespoon of maple syrup. How impractical is this handle? Can we talk about that? So usually I steer clear of oil, which is why peanut butter is the base of this sauce, but I will be using a little bit of sesame oil because it does add a nice flavor. 1 teaspoon of sesame oil, 1/2 teaspoon each of garlic powder and ginger powder, 1 tablespoon of cornstarch, and 3 tablespoons of water. If the sauce is still really thick, you can add another tablespoon of water. Whisk to combine. Pull the tofu apart with your fingers into bite-sized chunks and drop them into the bowl. So I use Pyrex containers so I can put tops on them and shake it, but you can just use a mixing bowl and then use a wooden spoon to mix it all around. Add tofu to your air fryer at 400 degrees for about 12 to 14 minutes until it is nice and crispy. All right, so here are our peanut butter tofu chicken bites, and this is paired with a nice kind of Asian-inspired dish. Moment of truth. That tofu is really good. That peanut butter is awesome. So I'll be honest, we made this a few hours ago because we're filming and that's just how it goes on set. I wish that I had tried it when it first came out of the air fryer, but I wanted to do a genuine, authentic reaction on camera, so we didn't do that. Yeah, I think if it's just a little, if it's a little crispier too, that's a 4.8. With a extra crispy, probably 4.9. Next up, we're gonna be cutting our tofu into squares, and we're gonna be making some spicy tofu bites. And we're gonna be using the tofu that we froze and then defrosted to create a meatier texture. Let's do it. So whenever you're cooking our tofu, you can either apply the sauce before or after. For this recipe, we're gonna experiment with both. So as I said, I don't usually press my tofu, but if I am gonna press my tofu, it would just be by taking a towel like this and then applying a little bit of pressure. Lay the block of tofu flat and cut in half lengthwise. Next, flip each half with the cut edge facing up and slice lengthwise into thirds. Flip the tofu over onto its side so the cut layers are stacked. Then slice into thirds to make squares. If you like, you can also make a diagonal cut on each square to make triangles. Both are great shapes for dipping the tofu easily into sauce. Combine a 1/4 cup of hot sauce, 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder, and 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. For the tofu that we're air frying before we add our sauce, I'm gonna use some liquid aminos to help the cornstarch stick. Air fry at 400 degrees for 12 to 14 minutes or until crispy. You can make either version of the spicy tofu bites, but I'm gonna show you how to make both. All right, so our tofu is super spongy and absorbent. So we actually went through all of the sauce and I need to add a little bit more. So I'd probably use 1.5 of the servings that I did originally. I'm so vegan, I don't even use sponges. I use frozen and pressed tofu. She's gonna wipe the counters down. Air fry at 400 degrees for 12 to 14 minutes or until crispy. So while our spicy tofu bites are cooking in the air fryer, we're gonna be whipping up some creamy vegan ranch. So for the base of this dressing, we're gonna be using Silken tofu. So we're basically gonna be dipping tofu in tofu, and that's gonna give us an extra boost of protein. Nice sound effect. To a blender, add 1 block of Silken tofu, 2 teaspoons of apple cider vinegar, 1 teaspoon of Dijon mustard, 1 tablespoon of garlic powder, 1 tablespoon of onion powder, 1 tablespoon of nutritional yeast, and half a teaspoon each of both salt and pepper. Blend until smooth and then pour into a jar. Roughly chop up about 2 tablespoons of fresh dill and then mix into the jar. This tofu ranch will thicken slightly in the fridge, so add water as desired to thin. So again, we're gonna try this dish 2 different ways. We add the sauce before we air fried, which brings a more crunchy flavor, and we're also adding the sauce after air frying, which adds a more intense flavor. Okay, time for the taste test. There's so many different flavors happening. And also the tofu has a really unique texture. This is the one that we froze ahead of time and then defrosted. I don't think I've ever had spicy chicken wing anything, like vegan or not. It's just not really my thing. So I've always seen celery sticks with these, but I've never experienced a celery stick with this. I feel like I've got a lot of firsts on this channel. So what, do you dip this one too? You do that? In one and the other? Is that how it works? Let's try it. Oh, I like that. That's nice. Kind of helps bring the intensity down a little bit. I need some soy milk. See how many different types of soy we got right now? So we got the tofu that we dip in tofu that we wash down with tofu milk. So yeah, that's a little too spicy for me. I'd probably give it a 3.8. I like the sauce. Probably give that sauce a 4.2. Now let's try the unspiced version. All right, let's try this. I actually really like that combo. I don't even watch football, and I'm thinking like, I need to watch some football right now. Isn't that what you do when you eat this kind of food? I would actually give that a 4.5. That's a 5 out of 5 every day. If you like almond milk or coconut milk or oat milk, you're wrong. Soy milk is a superior plant milk. Next up, we're gonna be making some savory tofu crumbles, which is one of my personal favorites, and we're gonna be using firm tofu and using a stove. This is one of the quickest ways to prepare tofu because all you need to do is crumble it up into a pan and cook it. All right, so I'm using a non-stick pan because I don't wanna add any oil, and to crumble this tofu, I know it sounds gross and it kinda looks gross, but it produces a really great crumble. So all I'm gonna do is take in my hands like this and extrude it, just crushing it. I know it looks weird, but it crumbles very perfectly. I always wash my hands first. If you don't wash your hands first, yes, it's extra gross, so don't do that. Now while we let this cook for a few minutes, I'm gonna start making our sauce. While that's cooking, grab a bowl and combine a 1/4 cup of tamari, 2 tablespoons of maple syrup, 2 teaspoons of apple cider vinegar, half a teaspoon of garlic powder, and half a teaspoon of paprika. Then mix. So at this point, I've cooked off most of the moisture and we're ready to add our sauce. Pour the sauce into the pan and immediately mix to coat all the tofu. The sauce will bubble from the heat. Continue to cook the tofu for another 5 minutes until all the edges are slightly browned. It's time for some savory tofu crumbles. Let's get some of the avocado on here. Actually, I should try the tofu crumbles by themselves. Let's do that first. Hard to go wrong with those. You know, we added maple syrup to this, didn't we? We added maple syrup, and that is a fantastic idea. I'm in the mood for kind of salty meals, but that adds a little bit of sweetness in a way that's really delightful to the tongue. Hard to go wrong with some tofu crumbles. I would give this a 4.3. Pretty good. All right, on to the next one. So we just covered a bunch of different ways that you can season, prepare, and cook tofu, but now I'm gonna show you my go-to daily tofu recipe. This super fast recipe only has 3 ingredients. We have extra firm tofu, teriyaki sauce that's store-bought, so it's all ready to go, and we also have some table tasty, which is some seasoning that we're gonna put on the top. And to show you just how fast you can prepare this recipe, I'm gonna set a timer. 3, 2, 1, go! All right, so the first thing I'm gonna do is cut it like so. Actually, I'll cut it together on here. So I'm going to cut it into 4 different sections. Top, these sides. Now I'm going to take the top off, line it up as so. I'm going to butterfly cut it, which means I'm going to cut through about half of it, going either way. So this is what it looks like. I'm gonna put on a little bit of sauce on the top, as so. You don't need too much. You're gonna go ahead, put the sauce into the top. You can also use super firm tofu for this, which is actually what I normally use. What I like most about the butterfly cut is that it cooks thoroughly throughout the entire cube of tofu, and it just makes a better texture and taste. So now all I'm gonna do is put a little bit of this on top. Put that in for 415 minutes. So it's about 4 minutes to do that whole thing. Actually, I still had to like open things and show things to the camera. So I think you can do it in less than 4 minutes. So super fast, really easy, and also it tastes delicious. Wow, who made this amazing tofu dish? This looks like the best one by far. I wonder what this one tastes like. I definitely didn't eat this yesterday. Pretty solid. But I have to be honest and say this is probably like a 3.7. Doesn't beat the other ones today. Gonna have to go back and rework my recipes. It's pretty solid. It's also super fast, which is the main reason I love it. Oh, that piece was a little better. That was a 3.9. I don't feel like this deserves a 4.0. So we'll have to take an L on this one. So that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any of your own tofu tricks, be sure to let us know in the comments. Also, please be sure to subscribe so you never miss another video. Thanks so much, and I'll see you on the next one.